to Leaders of Tomorrow, ETNA's daily platform for the Indian micro, small and medium enterprise sector. This series, it's our endeavor to celebrate entrepreneurship, bring you expert advice from renowned business leaders, as well as help you grow your business. The success, we believe, of any organization is a direct function of the people who are a part of it. And today on MSME Direct Connect, we are answering your calls, your emails, as well as all your social media queries. We have an expert panel right here in our studios today. Hemendra Hazari, independent banking expert. I also have Dr. Anil Menon. He is a faculty member at the SP Jain School of Management. Let's get started then. And our first query is coming in from Abhijit, which is a call. Go ahead, Abhijit.
My question is that regarding the finance from the bank, I have agricultural land. And from this, how can we generate funds from banks?
Okay, so that essentially he's saying, and we get a lot of these queries where entrepreneurs write and call into us and ask us, if we don't have collateral, for example, what do we do and what's the way forward? Would one of you want to take that on?
See, my understanding is that agriculture is a state subject, and therefore in most states agricultural land can only be mortgaged for agricultural purposes. So if he's doing some business which is agriculture linked, then it is possible. But if he's doing a business which is not agricultural based, then it is going to be extremely difficult to mortgage that to get funding from banks.
Professor Menon, would you want to add to that?
See, the entire problem is because it's not covered under the Securitization Act. So as Mr. Hemendra very correctly said, banks normally do not encourage giving land, and especially agricultural land as mortgage. But there is a solution to this. What the gentleman could possibly do is apply for a conversion of agricultural land. Once converted, it can be also given as a part collateral. And I think the esteemed colleague should also note that we have unsecured loans which is also available. So today there are a lot of initiatives like the CGT SME scheme, the Mudra Bank, etc., which he should be considering.
Okay, fair enough. Let's take in the next query coming in from Jayant Chavan. He's also calling in, and I understand it's a query as far as financing goes. Go ahead, Jayant.
Are Indian businesses are eligible to get bank loan, bank funding from World Bank?
See, when it comes to the World Bank deals with central governments or their state governments. So they will not directly deal with corporates or individuals. So therefore, if you want a loan from the World Bank as an individual or as a small company, it will not be possible. There are other avenues for finance, but not from the World Bank. From the World Bank has a subsidiary, the International Finance Corporation, which does funding for infrastructure projects, but that is also, it will be under some certain conditions. But again, if you are an MSME, it will be extremely difficult.
Do you want to add to that?
It can only go as an indirect thing. Just one line to add to what the dear colleague said. It can go as an indirect financing if he gets approved by one of the multilateral agencies. Direct funding is practically ruled out.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So I hope that answers your query, Jayant. Let's take in the third query. This is an email coming in from Ashok Patil. Ashok wants to know how MSMEs can face branding challenges, especially given that they're competing with MNC brands in the same space. He also wants to know that given how spare parts are a huge challenge and they have to source parts from outside of India, that adds to their cost. How does one compete effectively and efficiently? Dr. Menon, I want to start with you.
See, there's a misconception, and my dealing with family managed businesses and SMEs in particular has been, they always come with this opinion that branding requires a huge budget. That need not be the case. Today we have social media. You can always use social media. There is word of mouth that comes in. There could be something known as impact advertising. One thing good about this query is at least the gentleman is aware that branding is important. Now, how does he go about it? I think essentially, I believe the size should be somewhere in the mid segment. He should be using social media in a big way. That's number one. Number two, the second thing about MSMEs is when they go for branding, a very, very sad case, right? I have seen some of them advertise on national channels when the distributorship is only limited to local markets. Now, that's a clear failure of alignment. So the gentleman should realize that the entire branding should be in line with whatever is the current state of affairs. He should not overpromise, because if he tends to overpromise, and that's again one trait among the companies which tend to go into branding, If you overpromise, then and you don't deliver, that goes back. The last thing is internal communication among the employees. Many a times the employees are not tuned to what is the branding, what do the company stand for. This case, I think, MSMEs should really pay attention. Internally, there should be a communication regarding the branding exercise, so that the entire thing is aligned to the vision of the particular firm.
Okay. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. The typical size of this MSME is, definitely much smaller than the large cap. But if they're talking about competing in the same space as an MNC or a large cap company, would you say that the challenges are different? And this is, because we also do get a lot of queries around HR to say, how do we compete with larger players?
So I think he's raised a very valid point that today, because of technology, because of internet, social media has come in, and it can be used as a very important tool to broadcast your business, which was not there in the past. And therefore, for the MSMEs, they have to have a different type of strategy if they are competing with the MNCs. Now, because of the development of technology, and we've got these other platforms, I think they have to follow a different tactic. And I think the social media is very relevant, because today, a lot of the youngsters especially, they are online. I think that is the way the future of marketing and branding is also going to be.
So essentially, social media help you cut costs. In fact, speaking of social media, you can reach us on Facebook. We'll tell you how to do that. But let's take in our fourth query coming in from Facebook. Our viewer Anupam Mishra has written in. He's the founder and CEO at Autogear Pune based company, and this is his question. He says there are lots of startups where promoters have good experience in various fields and excellent operational skills. However, they are not considered favorably by investment community, who favor, according to him, IT and IIM graduates. He's written in asking how and why really experienced and qualified entrepreneurs without such degrees are not being considered as far as funding goes. So this is again a funding related query, but also talks about people who've had experience, for example 20-30 years in the field, but they don't necessarily have those degrees, and as everyone is competing for the same pie of investment, how does an MSME compete favorably? And in your experience, is it true that funding for someone without such a degree is necessarily hard?
See, I would put it this way, is that there are times, no doubt, where graduates from IIT, IIM get preference. That is even true in the job market, in the field of finance or in the private corporate sector. But having said that, in India, the MSME is a very vast sector. And all those who are also getting funding from banks and other state financial institutions, most of those promoters or their senior people are not from IIT, IIM. So I think what is important is that if you have a good business plan, if you have a good track record, and if you're giving them, your financiers, a viable plan which they think is workable, you should be able to get finance. So yes, to a certain degree, I would imagine, just like in the private marketplace, IIT, IIM graduates get preference, but I don't think it can rule you out from getting finance. I think what is important is your history, your track record, and your plan, whether it is a commercial viable plan. If the bankers feel it's a commercial viable plan or financer feels, he will fund it.
Professor Menon, have you come across such cases where they're finding it difficult to raise funds because, like our viewers saying, they don't have those IIT, IIM degrees or an SPG degree for that matter?
No, this is a false notion, absolutely false notion. I'll request the gentleman to first, I'll give you some famous examples. One is Mr. Ritesh Agarwal, right? If you look at what he has done with OYO rooms, right, and the current valuations that's happening, having an IIT, IIM degree may just give you an entry, but definitely it's not sure that you will get funding. Second, if you look at how does a PE or a VC evaluate a particular thing, right? My experience has been the first thing that we look at is the viability of the business model, as my esteemed colleague mentioned. Second, then we look at the team behind the entire thing, and the team, what we like to look there is, have they got the experience in that particular field, not necessarily the educational background. Third, what needs to come across is the passion for that particular thing. My own personal involvement and mentoring of some firms, I'll just like to give you one example.
Sure.
This is a firm based out of Cochin, of all places Cochin. It's a startup. It's for a gentleman who's dropped out of college. It's a very right. He didn't like the education methodology. So towards the end, he said, "I'm just giving up." He have started a firm today, and now that firm is already being looked at by private equity players. Some of his clients are ESPN, Star Sports, etc. He has a team of about 15 people who have been with him for the last 5 years. None of them are an IIM or an IIT, but the funds are willing to look at him. So I think this is a notion which has come across. One more, as a joke, we always say in the community, you need to have the surname Bansal, right, to get financing in e-com. I think these are all notions. There's no truth in that.
In Silicon Valley, full of entrepreneurs who've gone on to be successful but dropped out of these B schools. All right, gentlemen, let's take a very quick break. When we come back, we have more calls, email queries, as well as Facebook queries that are coming in. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, MSME Direct Connect, where we answer your calls, your emails, as well as Facebook queries on what it takes to survive in today's MSME world. We're taking queries now, and in fact, one query coming in from Facebook is from JC Malhotra. He's written in to ask us how MSMEs can empower themselves to compete with large cap players, and anything really being done by the government as far as easing labor laws goes, specifically for the MSME space. Professor Menon, maybe I'll start with you. So labor laws, anything that MSME should know in to be able to navigate it efficiently?
There's been some major amendments. If you look at the amendment, there's one amendment which just come in, the factories amendment, and second one is the apprentice amendment. It's just in 2014. So there has been some major amendments, but actually, if you look at it, MSMEs enjoy an advantage in terms of compliances over corporates. So the entire law is framed in favor of MSMEs. So if the gentleman's query is, has there been amendments? The clear answer is yes. But the central government has passed the amendments. Some states like Rajasthan has already passed the amendments. Is there any norms that comes into play? One simple example, and I think this current government right has taken up the Kamath Committee report of financial architecture of MSMEs very seriously. To give you one very simple example is, today registration of a firm can be done online, right? The entire thing is known as Udyog Aadhaar. Earlier, if you talk to MSMEs, the entire thing was, right, registration takes a lot of time, lot of formalities. Now that the entire thing, the red tapeism is trying to be cut. Having said that, I would also say, right, it's just the beginning, and we need to go some more steps, but the beginning has been made. Clearly, the beginning has been made.
Let's get in our next viewer. There's a call coming in from Shahir Kadim. Go ahead, Shahir.
The query I had was, should the process of scaling up for a SME be planned in a gradual manner over a long period of time, or should it be done like a project in a short period of time? And if so, what are the pitfalls in either case?
So when it comes to scaling up for an MSME, would you want to answer that query?
The answer is growth is imperative, and they have to keep doing it continuously. So one line answer, they have to keep doing it continuously, but it should not be an leverage growth. That's typically what I've seen among MSMEs is two extremes, two very clear extremes. One, some of them who are very happy being small, and they are pretty happy. There's nothing wrong about that. It's just that they are pretty happy remaining small. They would like to continue what they are doing. Unfortunately, many of them, once competition comes in, many of them get wiped out. There are the other extreme is, right, where some of them actually start growing very, very fast, and they get encouraged by reading newspapers, possibly watching shows like us, or professors like me going across and giving them success case studies. Then what do is they take the path of leverage growth. The last 4-5 years, my own experience with some of my students also have been, and they are from some very good family managed businesses, that they have not been able to handle that growth. And today they have to go back to the banks for restructuring, etc. So my polite response to a gentleman is, he should be considering growth. Growth is imperative. Only thing is, it should not be something which he cannot handle. He needs to ensure that he has the right team in place to handle that, the right financing mix to handle that. And last but not the least, he should ensure that he does what is known as sensitivity analysis. So one of the clear things which when we draw a business plan is you need to sit back and look at it and say, what would happen if my assumptions go wrong? I thought that I would be able to sell something at 100 rupees. What if I'm not able to sell it at 100 rupees? I'm able to sell it at 90 rupees. Now, these questions will force the promoters, the entrepreneur to actually relook at the business plan. And then once he gets the inner call, then I think he should be, right, he should be encouraged to go ahead with the project.
Okay, and by leverage you mean taking debt on the books?
Taking debt, and typically what happens is, since banks are not willing to finance, right, then they go across with unsecured debt. And unsecured debt, I'm sure all of us know that, does not come cheap. So then what we realize with such entrepreneurs is the passion overrides their entire financial wisdom.
We have time for just a few more queries. Let's take in an email query coming in from Vinod Dhawan. He's written in to ask whom MSMEs approach for sufficient working capital, especially if collateral security is limited. So this is similar in some sense to a question that we've already taken, but again this is coming up again and again. So what advice will you have?
See, the Indian government has put in a lot of these schemes in place, normally pioneered by SIDBI, which is the Small Industry Development Bank of India, or NABARD, and they can either approach any of them directly or they can do it through banks also. And normally these SMEs, they can get up to a loan of about 1 crore, which can be an unsecured loan, and which is guaranteed by a trust. So that is, but it's only up to 1 crore. So there are these mechanisms available to get finance at a reasonable rate of interest. And even if they want to have a technology upgradement or some marketing, there's not substantial funds per unit, but funds are available through these government schemes in effect.
All right, let's take in another call coming in from Rajesh Pandit. Go ahead, Rajesh.
The question is, we are running a public school at Agra and want to do marketing for the scheme. And also I want to know how we can increase our business and what measures can be taken.
All right, thanks very much for that, Rajesh. Professor Menon, marketing query.
I think public school education, one important thing is word of mouth. So he has to go for word of mouth. There's no two things about that. He could consider use of some technology, right, so that again, I'm re-emphasizing the entire point that I said, so that students go across and start talking about him. Use of social media is one more thing that he could go across. This query, I was just wondering, he said public school Agra. So the means of marketing is not much. I'm sure he would be looking at the students coming from a nearby locality possibly. What he could also look at is beyond the brick and mortar. And today you have a lot of technology driven companies which are coming in the educational space. So since this question is limited to marketing, my answer would be word of mouth and social media. The humble request to the colleague is also to think beyond the brick and mortar model, so that education might be made fun, learning for the kids. Also it can be more scalable then.
Okay, let's take in quickly the next call coming in from Prakash Khote. This again I understand is a very specific query. Prakash?
I am running pest control business in Pune, so I require labor problem. Kindly let me know how do I find good labor which I can retain.
Okay, fair enough. So he has a pest control business and the labor query is coming back again. What would you advise him?
Labor and not getting skilled labor, it's not labor, skilled labor has always been a problem. The gentleman should try and see the centers in which the Skill India program has been started. There's another scheme that I thought, right, which he could be of very good use for him, the Maulana Azad scheme, which is started, right, where they are training a lot of professionals for these sort of jobs. One more very important point for gentlemen should be that it's not only be attracting labor, what would he do to retain them should also be considered. My suggestion to him would be he should be looking at joining some of the associations, and I think some of the associations in the pest control industry are doing an extremely good job. an extremely good job. So getting people, yeah, the Skill India program, the ITIs, the Malada scheme, retaining them should be by giving them training, regular training, which I again reiterate, the associations are doing a great job about that.
Okay, fair enough. We have time for one last query, and this is an email coming in from Sandeep Shangvi. Sandeep has written it to us and says that he operates in the automotive space. He says they have not taken a process patent just yet, and that their process now is being copied by larger companies. He's written in to ask whether acquiring a patent would have protected them from being copied, and whether India really has judiciary protection which is sufficient enough at this point to protect the interests of small companies like himself, which depend heavily on innovation. Professor Menon, this is this is the first time we're getting this query as far as IP and patents go. What would you advise, sir?
First thing is my compliments that somebody from the MSME space is thinking of patents. So my compliments to the gentleman. Second, is process patent applicable in India? I'm not claiming to be an expert in this area, but my limited knowledge and reading says that what is applicable in India is product patents. And since a specific query is on process patents, he'll have to get it checked by a legal advisor. Patent enforcement in India is increasing. It's definitely increasing. It's rapidly growing up. A lot of MNCs have brought this culture. Indian companies, if you look at even a Bajaj Auto today, the number of patents that they have, right, is far more. The fact is, the judicial enforcement is going up. MSMEs lack in terms of patents. So he's thinking about it, which is extremely good. But some few points that he has to remember. One, it has to be an innovative product. Two, right, it should not be already, there should be no patent on that particular thing as of now. Third, it should have some commercial value. So many a times MSMEs feel that we have done something new and something extraordinary. If it has commercial value, possibly, right, he could apply for a patent and go through a regular procedure. Number of patents filed by MSMEs are increasing, but a long way to go.
A long way to go. Would you have anything to add to that, Hemant?
I think I think Professor Menon has dealt with it extremely well. I think it's extremely important for business in India to start getting into these technology patents, whether it's a process patent or a normal type of patent, because R&D in the Indian private sector has always been extremely low. I think that's the future. That once you get an innovative product out there, that's the way to take on the competition. So I think that should be the endeavor of everybody. Naturally, an MSME is, since they're typically very small, they are limited by the kind of funding that they can get by their technology. But I think this is the way one must go, because it is always the value add that you do on your product which will differentiate it, or the value add you do to your service which will differentiate your product from anyone else's.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming down to our studios and taking all these queries. We've run completely out of time on this episode of Leaders of Tomorrow, MSME Direct Connect. If you need expert advice for any aspect of your business, do feel free to get in touch with us and we'll get our experts to answer your queries. Do remember, you can always write in to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can also reach us on social media. Do remember to use the hashtag LOT, or just call us on the number which is flashing below on your screens. Thanks so much for watching.